we've made it to the beautiful Wheeler Island, part of the family group, only a couple of kilometres off Mission Beach.
It's unbelievable how close it is to the mainland, yet you could be anywhere in the world. You know, the turtles poking their heads up, the rainforest coming down to the fringing reef, the eagles that welcome us on entry. Mate, it's magic.
Let's call it ours for the day, mate.
Beauty. Incredible what you'll find washed up on the beach. That's the taste of summer, isn't it?
Fellow councillors, staff and residents viewing via live stream, good morning all and welcome. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we stand, the Gulnay people. I wish to acknowledge my respect for their current and emerging elders and those in dreaming. I thank them for the contributions they have made in building this community. Would you now please be upstanding? Pastor Mark Dewar will present the opening prayer.
And just as we begin, I'd like to extend a greeting to you on behalf of the Uniting Church and the Presbytery of Carpentaria, which is our regional council that extends from Bowen to Thursday Island and out to Mount Isa. 60 of us met over the last weekend at Mission Beach, and we're blessed to be in this place and to engage with the community here. As I begin to pray, there's a simple verse that encourages me in my leadership, and it comes from the Apostle Paul's letter to the Corinthians, and it just simply says, "Now it is required of those who have been given a trust, they must prove faithful." And for me, that encourages me in my small leadership role. So let us pray. Dear wise and loving God, I thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance, resilience, and for friendship. We thank you, Lord, for the courage that you give us that is required of each one each day. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honour of bearing the responsibilities that come with being elected to this important role. Thanks as well for the freedom to embrace you or the freedom to reject you. Thank you for loving us, even so, loving us from your boundless and gracious nature. Lord, in the scriptures you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I ask you for a blessing on our mayor, your blessing on all the councillors and for all the officials, and in particular for this assembled council here today. God, I ask that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our time, a sense of welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and to do good, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is dishonest disagreement, personal peace in their lives and joy in their tasks, favour for their families and important relationships. Lord, bless the agenda before those who serve our community. May this be a fruitful session, and may the decisions taken enhance the common good of the people they serve. May those who have been elected and gifted to serve be quick to listen and confident in their decision making. And may interruptions and unscheduled engagements become opportunities and assignments that lead to fruitful outcomes. Give all who serve the grace to stop for the one, to get low and go slow, walking and working in humility and compassion. And Lord, on this day we remember Ukraine. We remember the people that are being displaced. We remember the lives lost. We remember the freedom being robbed. Lord, all for personal gain and greed in the world. And Lord, we pray for your comfort, your peace, and for protection, and in particular, Lord, for a cessation of warfare in that place. And Lord, for the resources of the world and heaven to be released into that place. And Lord, we would also remember those that are affected by disaster, as we are too often. Lord, we remember those who are affected by the floods in New South Wales and southeast Queensland, and we would pray that, again, the resources of the nation and heaven would be released, that people's lives may be restored, and that the trauma of these events would be washed away from them. Lord, this we pray in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mark. Do we have any apologies? I'll take that as a no. We move on to declaration of conflict of interest. Declaration of prescribed conflict of interest or declarable conflict of interest. Please use this opportunity to make public any prescribed conflict of interest or declarable conflict of interest in respect of the items in the agenda. Councillors should use this opportunity to disclose and/or comment on other councillors and/or staff interests in accordance with the Act and the regulations. Councillors, are there any conflicts to declare? Councillor Barnes.
Good, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yes, 7.3, Mr. Mayor. It's been brought to my attention that I have a conflict of interest due to Mario Quagliata being a neighbour to my farm and at times does contract work for me. So I'll be leaving the room, Mr. Mayor, at 7.3.
That's so recorded. Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Chewy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to declare that I have a personal interest in item 3.2, Community Assistance Scheme Annual Grant Application 21 for 22. This personal interest relates to my association with the Tackle Bin project that I work with Mission Beach Wildcare. I have utilised the Office of the Independent Assessor app, which has identified that this is not a declarable conflict of interest, and I'm requesting consideration of my fellow councillors that I remain in the room and vote on the item 3.2 Community Assistance Scheme Annual Grant Application 21-22. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. We will move on to the other council and gather all their submissions, and then we'll vote. Over to you, Councillor McLeod.
Thank you, and through the Chair, I also would like to declare a personal interest in item 3.2, Community Assistance Scheme Annual Grant Application 2021-22. This personal interest relates to my association with Carmel Cavallaro with the Innisfail Pony Club, who is a former employee of mine. I have utilised the Office of the Independent Assessor app, which has identified that is not a declarable conflict of interest, and I'm requesting consideration of my fellow councillors that I remain in the room and vote on item 3.2, Community Assistance Scheme Annual Grant Application for 21-22.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. Councillor Purban.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I also would like to declare that I have a personal interest in item 3.2, the Community Assistance Scheme Annual Grant Application 21-22. The personal interest relates to my membership with the Innisfail District Tennis Association. I've also utilised the Office of the Independent Assessor app, which has identified this is not a declarable conflict of interest, and I am requesting consideration of my fellow councillors that I remain in the room and vote on item 3.2, the Community Assistance Scheme Grant Application 21-22.
So, councillors, we've heard that the three councillors have indicated they've gone to the OIA app, and that has identified no conflict. How do we feel about allowing them to stay in the room to vote on the community grants? Yep. In favour?
I'm in favour, yes.
So that they're okay. We don't have to record a mover and a seconder for that? Okay. All right. I need to move now on to a withdrawal item 5.2. Councillors, I wish to advise that item 5.2, provision of legal assistance for employees and councillors policy review, has been deferred to the April local government meeting. So that's been withdrawn from today's agenda. We'll now move on to item 1, confirmation of minutes. Would somebody move it that the previous minutes are a true and accurate record? Moved by Councillor Chewy, seconded by Councillor Pearl. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to item 2, any business arising from the previous minutes. Councillors, are there any business arising? Take that as a no. Thank you. We move on to item 3, community and culture. Item 3.1, page 27, communication and engagement plan, Mission Beach Town Centre, budget consideration. And Ms Holmes will present this report. This is her first report to council, so she's a little bit nervous, so please be kind to her. Over to you, Ms Holmes.
Is this all on?
Yep, push the button. Is it on?
Good morning, Ms. Holmes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, it is on. Good morning, councillors.
Morning.
Through the chair, I'm taking the communication and engagement plan for the Mission Beach Town Centre Revitalisation Project as read. To summarise, this report outlines the importance and overall benefits of an effective communication and engagement strategy. The report identifies key stakeholders, negotiables versus non-negotiables of the project, the level of engagement and the channels in which council will use to reach stakeholders at various levels. The Mission Beach Town Centre Revitalisation Project is a highly anticipated project within the community and will invigorate the precinct and create a vibrant town centre. Once complete, it will bring great benefits to the community, business owners and wider region. As the report recognises, it is important that during the design and construction phase, we effectively engage with key stakeholders to ensure council can deliver a project that has a shared vision with the community, resulting in positive outcomes and relationships. As outlined, the report recommends that council endorse the communication and engagement plan for the Mission Beach Town Centre Revitalisation Project, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to make minor changes to the engagement and communication plan as required during the implementation. Note, project budget for the Mission Beach Town Centre Revitalisation Project for 2001 to 2022 financial year of $1 million. Approve the budget allocation of $27,300 to implement the communication and engagement activities of the Mission Beach Town Centre Revitalisation Project in line with the plan. Requests the Chief Executive Officer present the consideration terms of reference for the community and stakeholder reference group. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Holmes. Councillors, any questions for the officer? Councillor Chewy.
Thank you. Well done, Ms Holmes. I would just like to speak to it. I don't have a question. I just think this is a great way. I know that the business houses at Mission Beach and the wider community are very, very excited about this project. I think this is a really important piece that we do because communication and engagement through the project from beginning through to end is very, very important. As a business owner, I can only imagine what the slight disruption that's going to be caused. So people need to have an understanding of where we're going and where we're, the final destination and the journey we're going to take them on. I just reach out to community. This will be on the website. So if there's any user groups that feel they haven't been included in this program, please reach out to council. We need to hear the voices that will be affected by this project. So it's important that if you feel that you haven't been included on the list, to please reach out to council. But I'm very, very excited about this project and I congratulate Zoe, Ms Holmes, I beg your pardon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. Councillor Millwood.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I just wanted to ask if the stakeholder reference group has already been developed or is it in the process of being developed?
Thank you for your question. I believe this will be best answered by Mr Graffin.
Through the chair, thanks, councillor. The stakeholder reference group terms of reference are currently in a draft form, so they'll be brought to council for consideration at the next council meeting for council to consider and adopt.
Any further questions, councillors? I just want to make a comment about how this is linked to our corporate plan. It's all about council working in partnership with the community to enhance and promote pride in and livability of our region. So it connects up nicely with our corporate plan as well in terms of this project going forward. Would somebody move the officer's recommendation? Moved by Councillor Chewy, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms Holmes. We move on to item 3.2, page 36, Community Assistance Scheme Annual Grant Applications, and Ms Saffron will present this report.
Good morning, everyone.
Welcome.
I'd just like to say I'm presenting the report on behalf of Kath Hanson, our Community Development Officer, who is away at this point in time. I'd also like to make note that the Mayor, in this report it states that the Mayor was part of the committee and the Mayor was not actually present at the decision-making of the scheme's application. So Cassowary Coast Regional Council provides an annual grants program through Cassowary through the Community Assistance Scheme to support community organisations and individuals making a positive contribution to the development of the Cassowary Coast region. Through the scheme, the community is able to undertake key initiatives that help grow the livability of the region and also build community pride and resilience. The 2021-22 allocated budget for the scheme was $30,000, with funding capped at $3,000 per application, or 65% of the total project cost, whichever was the lower amount. Applications closed on the 22nd of February 2022, and the report considers 9 applications and makes recommendations in relation to funding. The recommendation is that Council approves the $23,429 of the 9 recommended applications for the Community Assistance Scheme. In total, there was 26,000 in total. So the total amount of applications, $26,363, and the total that has been approved is the 23,429. This has contributed to 45,188 projects across the region in this time. During the process, there was the group actually asked around conflict, so that was brought up with the committee, and Councillor Chewy advised that she had a perceived conflict of interest in relation to the Mission Beach Wildlife Inc., and also Councillor McLeod advised a perceived conflict in relation to the Innisfail Horse and Pony Incorporation abstained from both abstained from voting on their applications.
Thank you, Ms Saffron. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Millwood.
It's not a question through the chair, it's just, I'd just like to say thank you to Ms Hanson for her efforts of the presentation of the applications for consideration, because I realise that a lot of work goes into correlating all the information and putting it all together for us to review. So I'd just like to say a special thank you for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. That's recorded. Councillor Chewy.
Yeah, thank you, and I agree with support Councillor Millwood's comments. I'd also like to reach out to community to once again to please reach out to our officers when it comes to applying for a grant. You have a much greater success of receiving the grant if you've ticked all the boxes, and that's really important. So please reach out to our staff if you're thinking of applying for a grant. Ms Hanson did make herself available, as we know, prior to these grants closing. So yes, we hate to see people disappointed over something that they may have missed. So it's really important to reach out to council officers to seek guidance on your application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. Any further questions or comments? Moved by Councillor Millwood, seconded by Councillor McLeod. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms Saffron. I just want to make a comment about our asset rationalisation process that's been underway for about 18 months now, and tidying up leases and management agreements. I think this is a good vehicle to help the good clubs that sign up on the leases and management plans to assist them going forward. And I note it was capped at $30,000 for the current budget, but it's something we need to look at going forward so we can give those good clubs out there a hand up as they sign up to new leases and agreements. We now move on to item 4, economic activation and tourism. Item 4.1, page 44, small business friendly charter, and Ms Clark will present this report. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, councillors. Through to the chair, taking the report and attachments as read, I'll provide an overview of the Small Business Friendly Charter report. The Small Business Friendly Charter initiative recognises local councils that are actively supporting small business in their regions and are focused on helping small business recover and build resilience following disasters and economic challenges. It is important to highlight that the Charter has received support from the region's local chambers of commerce and industry groups, and in particular the Innisfail District Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Tourism, who have provided a loud voice for its members in support of the Charter and the commitments that it entails. The Queensland Small Business Commissioner's Office focused on the creation of a charter that aims to reduce barriers between large organisations and small business to enhance the operating environments for small businesses. By committing to the new program and charter, Council will see a dual benefit. It will reinforce our commitment to small business and their development as is identified in our corporate plan, and the initiative will allow us to better connect with the needs of small business in the region. The charter commitments will provide support to over 97% of registered businesses in the Cassowary Coast region. Consultation has been had internally with the leadership management team, relevant departments that are impacted by the charter commitments and EMT, and externally through local chambers and industry groups. I'd also like to note that the report states that the Mission Beach Chamber of Commerce is awaiting incorporation. However, they have now announced their incorporation, so congratulations to them. This report holds a low-risk profile with implications to policy through our procurement policy regarding payment terms and conditions, with Council to review current terms that sit at 30 days. And financial and resource implications, noting that majority of commitments and reporting requirements attached to the Charter will be absorbed by the Business and Industry Liaison Coordinator role. The report recommends that Council sign the Charter at the Queensland Small Business Friendly Conference on the 29th of April.
Thank you, Ms Clark. Any questions for the officer? Councillor McLeod.
It's not a question, sorry, through the chair. I just want to reiterate, this is a really great initiative for small businesses in our region, and I encourage all businesses to join their local chamber, whether that be in Cargill, Tully, Mission Beach or Innisfail, because they will be the voice. So thank you, it's really great.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. Any further comments or questions? Yeah, I just want to, yeah, okay, moved by Councillor Millwood, seconded by Councillor McLeod. Before I put it to the vote, I just want to talk about the role that Ms Clark has now undertaken on behalf of Council, the Business and Industry Liaison Coordinator. This came out of the effects of COVID. All of our local chambers went into hibernation. Business people were coming to the Council looking for help, guidance about funding, grants, etc. And we had nowhere to steer them. So it was essential that we created a coordinator within our core business, our staff, and hence we've got this great report today where they're starting to reform across Cassowary Coast. I'd also like to talk about how this report connects to our corporate plan. What do we want to see? A strong, diverse economy which provides opportunities for business and investment with an integrated approach to a long-term planning where the region's assets meet the community's needs. And this report certainly delivers for all those small businesses in that regard. So thank you for the great work.
Thank you.
We have a move and a second. All in favour?
Can I just...
Carried unanimously. Yep.
I also want to back up what Councillor McLeod said about encouraging people within the community, especially businesses, to get on board and join their local chamber, because that really is your voice to all avenues really within council. So I really encourage you to get on board.
Yeah, well said. Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Thank you,
Thank
Ms
you.
Clark. We now move on to item 5, Governance, Environment and Finance. Item 5.1, page 49, the Finance Report, and Mr Jennings will present this report. Morning.
Good morning. Morning, Mr. Jennings. Good morning. Yes, so the report is for the end of February, and it's based on variance analysis and year-to-date actuals against budget. So as you're aware, it's a requirement to present a financial report on a monthly basis to council. So I'll go through the key highlights as at the end of February. So overall surplus was 23.4 million, and that's 2.6 million favourable to the year-to-date budget, which the year-to-date budget at the end of Feb is 20.8 million. Now the reason for the 2.6 million favourable variance is operational revenue is more than anticipated at the end of February, so it's just under 800,000 additional income at that stage of the year. And also operational expenditure is favourable by 1.7 million. At the end of Feb, cash balances for council were 65.7 million, with about 22 million of that in short-term investments. The capital expenditure for the month of February was 1.9 million, with the year-to-date capital expenditure just under 21 million, which is 42% of the capital works program of 49 million. So I'll briefly touch on the what's making up the year-to-date variances. The major ones are fees and charges are favourable by over 400,000, and that is largely due to an increase in building and planning fees based on greater demand than anticipated. Interest earnings is under budget by 145,000, and that's obviously because of the low interest rates that we've had throughout the financial year, but it's been communicated that interest rates will start to pick up, so we'd probably be hopefully reaching budget by the end of June. Operating grants are favourable by 649,000, and that's due to emergent works funding, which relates to the previous financial year, and it wasn't included in the adopted budget. I'll move on to employee expenses, and they're favourable to budget, and that's largely due to several vacant positions. So it's actually 850 favourable in salaries, and the majority of the vacant positions in service delivery will I know they've been through a recruitment process, so the majority of those positions will be filled. And that is offset by an increase in contract labour costs. So obviously with the vacant positions, to get the work done, we need to employ contractors. So yeah, if you put employee costs and contract labour together, it nets off to 0 or close to. The other major variance is materials and services, which is under budget by 1.7 million, and that is due to reduced fleet expenditure, and which is related to the timing of the waste plant delivery. We've had a savings with property insurance of 119,000, which is a bonus. And the main favourable variance in materials and services is the curb waste collection contract payments, and they're 650 favourable to budget. But obviously the contract payments, they're not set to a specific amount each month, so they will go up and down. And we've had a reduction in electricity expenditure from the implementation of solar initiatives. So wrapping up, they're the main issues. When next month's March finance report is tabled to council, we'll have a far better idea of where we expect to end up 30th of June. Currently we're saying that we'll have a surplus of just under $12,000, but that's likely to change when we do forecasting and looking at the current budget. So, and I didn't speak much about the capital program because that will be discussed later this morning. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr Jennings. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Millwood.
Yes, through the chair, so the contract labour cost, which is actually higher at the moment, should be able to expect that will reduce once the recruitment process is completed, do you think?
Definitely, yes.
And the other question is the waste contract payment, that 657, is that because invoices haven't been paid or?
The last invoice paid was the November invoice, but the finance team have been accruing the monthly invoices, but it's been based, the accrual amount's been based on the November invoice. So yeah, because they haven't submitted their invoices, we don't actually know whether it's higher or lower. But it's something that probably needs to be tabled, that we, you know, put some pressure on them to get their invoices in.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions? Yeah, moved by Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Barnes. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Mr Jennings, I also note on page 51, Council had 65 million in the bank in cash.
That's correct.
At an interest rate of 0.59. So potentially, as interest rates go up, that's going to be a positive for us.
Yeah, it will be.
Okay.
So yeah, cash balances are good at the moment.
Thank you, Mr Jennings. Okay, as we mentioned earlier, item 5.2, page 64, has been deferred to the April meeting. That's the provision of legal assistance for employees and councillors policy. We now move on to item 6, asset sustainability. 6.1, page 72, lease disposal, Innisfail and District Men's Shed, and Mr McBride will present this report. Good morning.
Morning all. I think that's on. This is for a lease disposal between Council and the Innisfail District Men's Shed Incorporated. As a summary, Council officers have been working with the Executive Committee of the Innisfail and District Men's Shed to grant 2 leases over their existing premises as described in this report. As background, the Men's Shed in Innisfail are a self-funded community organisation providing support and activities for men and aiding in men's health and companionship. Activities include furniture repairs and restoration, woodworking project, minor mechanical repairs on small equipment, which are often charged out for a small fee or sold for a small fee to fund the club's activities. The Men's Shed have 35 active members who regularly participate in these activities. The Men's Shed was established in 2013 and have occupied the site on Corinda Street, which is the old BMX club, since it folded. Since taking possession of the site, they have done a fantastic job of cleaning up the space, continue to make improvements, and grow and deliver to the services that it delivers today. The current management agreement expired on the 31st of January 2022, and subsequently the Innisfail Men's Shed have applied for council for a long-term lease at that site. The Men's Shed application was assessed against Council's adopted principles and proposed community use of assets policy. This assesses organisations across 4 key criteria, which includes governance and compliance criteria, community and economic benefit, sustainability, and utilisation. The information provided by the Men's Shed demonstrated high value in each of these criteria, reflecting their eligibility to enter into a long-term lease with Council. A lease was negotiated with the Men's Shed in line with the following key terms. Premises at Corinda Street, Innisfail, the term of 20 years. Rent would be a peppercorn arrangement at $1 per year. Outgoings would be all eligible rates, charges, utilities and insurance. And in regards to financial, the Men's Shed would own all improvements on the land. It was noted in the risk that the existing facility contains asbestos and a number of old tyres from the BMX track. Neither of these were installed by the Innisfail Men's Shed, and the Men's Shed requested that it not be held responsible to dispose of these assets or these materials if such removal is necessary by changes in legislation or storm damage, and Council would agree to absorb these costs. And Council has agreed to do that as part of the lease. In addition, Council have agreed to supply the Men's Shed with consumables to manage noxious weeds over the old BMX site. Therefore, it is recommended that Council grant 2 leases to the Innisfail and District Men's Shed Incorporated over the existing lots at Corinda Street in Webb, Innisfail, for a fixed term of 20 years, rent $1 per annum, outgoings, all rates and charges as described in the lease, and permitted use would be Men's Shed Club and associated activities.
Thank you, Mr McBride. I initially like to acknowledge 2 people. I attended the meeting in 2013, which was chaired by Miss Saffron, who's sitting at the back of the hall. She chairs the Community Support Centre Management Committee, and a big group of men come together. It was all about mental health and social wellbeing. They needed social interaction. When they retire, they drive their wives mad, and they needed a shed. All men need a shed. So to Jackie, thank you for what you did back in 2013. They initially found a home at the old Scout hut on the Corso. That didn't work out too good because Scouting Australia hit them with a big charge of $6,000 a year rent. So Miss Saffron found the BMX track, which had been abandoned. It was untidy, unsightly, on the edge of Wrights Park, and they've made it their home. They're very good corporate citizens, do a great service in the community. They help out a lot of other groups that need a bit of handiwork, with timber in particular, and I fully support the recommendation. But Councillor Baines wants to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I do appreciate the ability to say a few words. Apparently I'm getting close to being at the age where I can join the Men's Shed. I've got a significant 0 at the end of one of my birthdays this year, so I have had that discussion with the boys about when I can join up. But what I wanted to speak to this morning was about, this is a great example of the asset rationalisation process that Council's going through, and for people to understand that asset rationalisation isn't about destroying things and tearing things down. I was complimented by some of the Men's Shed members at the Feast of the Senses on Sunday about the excellent work the team had done. A lot of small groups see these sort of processes as quite onerous and think it's something insurmountable, but I'd like to speak to Mr McBride and Mr Valenti directly, and they've asked me to pass their congratulations on to the team that have worked with them in this process. And again, look, I'm very supportive. My wife needs me to go somewhere, so, and I'm sick of going to the doghouse, so I think that the Men's Shed will be a great alternative. So there may be other people speaking, but I would move the motion.
Moved by Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Chewy, seconded, and Councillor Barnes first.
Good, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question for Mr McBride. When you go to that financial and resource implications, could you just elaborate on that a little bit? And is there a clause in the leases if any of these clubs fold? Should that be put in the lease? What happens then, or is that up to council decision at the time?
Yeah, I think that's definitely highlighted as a risk, and it's like with any lease that or any form of tenure that council enters into with a community organisation, is that there is a risk that during that term the community group could fold. And we acknowledge that if that's the case, those assets will come back to council for them to manage and potentially dispose of, or go out to lease again. So it's certainly being considered in this process.
Yeah, now that question I asked, that financial and resource implications, could you just run through that briefly again, please?
Oh, I haven't got that paper.
It says through the application of appropriate clauses within the leasee retains ownership of all improvements and will be responsible for all asset insurance. So we say what the insurance value's got to be. Is that the way it works?
Council gets all of its building assets valued periodically. Okay. So we set that initial value and pass it on, but it's up to the Men's Shed to manage that process into the future as they're the asset owners.
So we're going to ask them to pay like the word depreciation, that doesn't really come into a lease, does it?
No,
But it's in there. The word's
there's
in it.
no depreciation because the community group is the owner of the asset.
That's
so
correct.
they do their own accounting. It sits on their balance sheets, and they manage insurance and
Thank you.
so council doesn't depreciate the asset.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Chewy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just very quickly, yes, I just would think this is a great project. I know when I had my stall at Mission Beach for community, the most questions and queries that were asked were about where is a men's shed. A lot of new people had come to the area and seemingly they needed to find a bit of spare time for them by themselves. So that was one thing that I noted was the men's shed was the biggest, most popular venue destination. Thank you.
Councillor Millwood.
Just wanted to say through the chair that Marsha will be very happy that you'll have somewhere to go to get out of her hair.
No doubt about it. It's written on the side of the fridge already. It's there. Any further questions or comments? Would somebody move the recommendation, please? Oh, sorry, it's been moved by Councillor Baines. Councillor Chewy seconded. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr McBride. Move on to item 6.2, page 75, Trade, Waste and Water Restrictions Policy Review. Mr Page will present this report.
Morning, Mr Mayor, Mr CEO, councillors. Okay, so just in summary, Council is committed to ensuring its policies are reviewed and updated on a regular basis. The following policies have been reviewed and where applicable, updates have been implemented. Those two policies are the Trade Waste Policy, IS 005, and our Water Restrictions Policy, IS 008. Just a brief background on both of those policies. The objective of Council's Trade Waste Policy is to ensure the provision of a liquid waste disposal service for domestic, commercial and industrial waste in accordance with the principles of environmental sustainability and with Council's legal responsibilities and obligations. The policy also assists Council to meet all legislative environmental requirements relating to the disposal of and reuse of effluent and sludge from its wastewater system and assist in the control of pollution from stormwater outfalls under its control. The objective of Council's Water Restrictions Policy is to establish an approval process for the implementation of water restrictions for Cassowary Coast Regional Council. Regularly reviewing policies and procedures keeps councillors, council staff and other stakeholders up to date with regulations, technology and industry best practices. Policy review ensures that policies remain consistent, current, relevant and effective while also providing clarity to the reader when dealing with accountability issues or activities that are of critical importance to council, such as health and safety, legal liability, regulatory requirements or issues that have serious consequences. So the recommendation today is that Council adopt the Trade Waste IS 005 and Water Restrictions IS 008 policies, which have been reviewed with minor administrative changes made to the existing policies.
Thank you, Mr Page. Any questions for the officer? If not, moved by Councillor Chewy, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Page.
Thank you.
We now move on to item 6.3, page 83, the TIDS program, Transport Infrastructure Development Scheme, and Mr Fisher will present. Good morning.
Morning. Yeah, councillors, the TIDS program, as it's effectively known, is the Transport Infrastructure Development Scheme funding program, which is administered by the Department of Transport and Main Roads. The funding is intended to support the development of the transport network within a region, and our region being FNQ Rock. The focus of that funding is largely around improving what's known as local roads of regional significance, which are the higher order roads that are, as the name implies, significant to the operation of the transport network across the region. As a funding source, the way this funding is distributed is through a prioritised multi-criteria analysis process with a technical committee making a recommendation to the FNQ Rock Regional Road Group, of which the Mayor is a member. This funding has proved very beneficial to council over the years, with some significant projects built and constructed on a 50-50 basis. Like any funding program, however, there is a requirement that the funding is spent within the financial year that it is approved in. And what this means is that there's a requirement for all councils who participate in the scheme to be organised and deliver. And what we find is across the region, as is the case in every region across the state, FNQ Rock is probably one of the better performing ones, is that from time to time there's a need to reallocate funding within that program to ensure that the program allocation is spent. In recent times, I guess being organised and having good asset management plans and good works programs has helped Cassowary Coast Regional Council, and with the recent adoption on the 3rd of February from the FNQ Rock Regional Road Group, Council picked up an additional $443,000 worth of funding for culvert renewal projects on Kennedy Creek Road, Tully Gorge Road and Bingle Bay Road. So that's a really good outcome. I guess the ongoing work for culvert renewals is going to be a challenge for our community into the future. So I guess the recommendation is to note that funding, but also allocate the saving that comes from that 50% subsidy back into that renewal program for other culvert renewal projects. And the council will continue to seek TIDS funding to support the delivery of transport projects that sit within our transport asset management plan. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Millwood.
Yeah, through the chair. So, Mr. Fisher, when the reallocation of funds needs to be done, is that taken back to FNQ Rock for the decision to be made?
Yeah, through the chair. So the technical committee review the program, and based on the priority of the projects within that program, make a recommendation to the FNQ Rock board. So yes, it does go back to that board to make that decision.
Any further questions? I'd just like to compliment our asset management team, our asset management plans. When the government rattled the cage about 5 years ago, where councils were lagging, they weren't acquitting these funds in the appropriate time, and hence a redistribution. Cassowary Coast Regional Council was not on that list. Get it and spend it. We were doing the right thing, and you get rewarded when you do that, because you're the recipient of the reallocation of other people's slow work in terms of implementing their projects. So I just want to put that on record. Thank you for the great work you do on behalf of our council, Mr. Fisher. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Baines.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to reiterate what you said. It is due to the great works that the council officers and the department make that we often find ourselves in this great position where we can pick up some of this work, and the works that's been done with the team within our organisation I've only been here for a term and a half, but it's greatly improved, and it's fantastic to see that these projects are coming forward, and that Cassowary Coast is recognised as, we can get the money and we can get it done.
Yep.
So it's great to see. So
yep.
I would again move this motion.
Moved by Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Purvin. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move on to item 6.4, page 87, South Mission Beach Shared Path Project. Mr. Fisher will present.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Councillors, the South Mission Beach Pathway Project to connect the missing link between Kennedy Esplanade and the current path that runs alongside the transfer station came out of the Mission Beach cycle route strategy, which was prepared in 2018 in consultation with the Department of Transport and Main Roads. One of the main features of, I guess, that study was to identify the missing links throughout the Mission Beach communities, and with a mind to improve the connectivity and provide a network of pathways that would allow people to ride and walk around the beautiful Mission Beach. We picked up some funding in 2019, $400,000 on a 50-50 based project to construct a path between those two areas, around 460 metres in total. By virtue of the, I guess one part which I'll refer to as stage 2 in the report, had some significant challenges in terms of the available space and the services in that verge to construct stage 2. So on that basis, the project was split into 2 stages, and stage 1, about 280 metres of path, was completed in December 2021. The stage 2 of the project still needs to be completed, with 180 metres of pathway remaining to complete the connection. Initially, the intent, as shown in the transport plan, was to follow South Mission Beach Road, but as I said, there's some challenges there, and so an alternative alignment which tracked behind the properties was considered. Upon further investigation and environmental assessments and consultation with the state government, the requirements there in terms of vegetation clearing to construct that path are quite difficult to achieve. It would come at significant cost in terms of studies, and then a significant amount of vegetation would have to be cleared. So on that basis, the project team, we consider that the best approach to complete this project is to proceed with the original alignment along South Mission Beach Road. This will require some property acquisitions to provide us enough room to fit the pathway in. If people are familiar with that site, it is quite tight when you go down there. However, we do know that in the past, and there's a bike bus that runs from South Mission to the Mission Beach School, and there is, it's a pretty important missing link. It's one of the steepest, narrowest sections remaining on that connection. So recommendation is that council can proceed with the detailed design of stage 2 with the alignment adjacent to South Mission Beach Road, and proceed with the acquisition of land as determined by the detailed design, and continue to engage with DTMR regarding approvals and funding.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Any questions for Councillor Millwood?
Yes, through the chair. So, Mr. Fisher, I've got 2 questions. First one was, when was the community consultation done for this? And the second question is, was there any consideration for this path to go along the existing track down near the surf club?
Yes, through the chair. Understand that in 2018 there was some broad consultation undertaken regarding the cycle route strategy report. That was obviously a very high level report which looked at pathways from Bingle Bay all the way through to South Mission Beach. Further to that, in recent times when this project has come out as a project in its own right, there's been engagement with adjoining property owners in terms of consultation, and then I guess general conversations with the coordinator of the Mission Beach bike bus, who recognises the importance of this link in the network. Regards to the alternative alignment through that other previously walking track, the basis of the strategy report and the TMR funding we received is to deliver high class cycling infrastructure, and there's very specific standards from TMR around that. The main one being 2.5 metres is the minimum width, and the department are really looking for alignments that are, I guess, facilitate high volume, high speed type, in terms of as cyclists go, access. And also another key consideration of that program is to think about, I guess, natural surveillance. So you'll see that a lot of the routes that we've been using for this funding, Seaview Street, Marks Park and the like, while there are alternatives available, I guess the usage and the safety element there for particularly young children is that picking alignments that don't take people off the road where there's high levels of natural surveillance from passing vehicles is another key consideration. So that specific route was not considered, largely on the basis of, I guess, the intent of that strategy report and the intent of the funding that Main Roads provide to these types of projects.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Any further questions? If not, would somebody move the recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor McLeod, seconded by Councillor Chewy. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move on to item 6.5, page 93, CCR Capital Report. Mr. Fisher will present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillors, regular monthly update on the capital report. As at the 6th of March, we were approximately 62% spent on our capital program. Thankfully, the sun has shown its face and the weather has improved. That's enabled our crews and our contractors to make some much needed progress given the wet weather earlier in the year. I guess some recently completed projects, Cardwell Transit Centre asphalt overlay, smart meters in Belvedere, and Violet Smith Park toilet renewal, as well as Wells Road resheeting. I'm just happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability that councillors might have about specific projects in there.
Any questions or comments, councillors? I'd just like to comment on an item on page 97, the Hadrill Park RV camping. I note the caretaker for this period has moved in, and I noted last week a lot of groundwork being done by contractors in terms of an internal road system, which is great, because last year they were being pulled out of there because they got bogged. It is the old town dump, so I understand why you would get bogged there. They've now learnt their lesson, and they're spending some money on that great asset. So with the tourist season ready to start, they've moved in ready to go, and I note their members were there doing the mowing as well. So it's a great outcome for council. We no longer service that park. It's all done by CMCA, so it was a great result. And in return, CMCA commented that that park was the most successful park they've ever opened in Australia in the first 3 months of operation. They were overwhelmed by what they saw when they come to do the official opening. So well done, Justin, and to you and your team. Any questions? Councillor Millwood.
Yeah, no, just through the chair, just a bit of a comment about the implementation of the crew by function. So I'm hoping that we should start to see some benefits reaping from the changes that we've made in that space.
Through the chair, I think.
As in the work being done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as all the councillors are well aware, one of the main thrusts of that was to really get those teams set up by function so that they could really prioritise their time and their effort into one, or less core disciplines rather than being spread across a whole variety. And yes, it's I guess even as a capital works team, the conversations around programming and scheduling and the works that we might put out to tender are certainly becoming far more effective, that we know we've got that dedicated resource to the capital program. So yes, I too share your hope that we start to see improvement there.
Thank you for that comment, Councillor Millwood. Councillor Chewy.
Sorry, Mr. Fisher, just the Mission Beach car park, I believe it's this far away, or is just the plantings were going in, is that correct?
Through the chair, yes. That far away. Yes, the plantings are one of the main outstanding things to be completed, as well as the painting of the islands, just to improve that look. We're also, one of the things which we intend to do, probably on the back of the larger CBD project, is obviously install some solar lighting in that car park as well. But effectively, the landscaping is the main outstanding thing to open that park up.
I did, and I have spoken to you, but if you could just clarify for us all, there is a design of car parks. We can't just have like matchbox cars lined up in a row. Is that correct? There has to be flow, and safety factors have to be taken into considered when design is created.
Yeah, through the chair, that's right. When designing that car park, obviously it looked like a big open area, and then we went and put a whole heap of islands and whatnot in there, which I guess could say we're taking away from the space. But as we'll all know from our own experience in understanding a variety of in driving through a number of car parks, and particularly with the increasing amount of large 200-sized Land Cruiser 200-sized vehicles around, making sure that the car parks are have enough space for people to drive through and circulate, find parks, not get into dead ends where they where they can't then get out of. That means that you have to provide those islands and that line marking to provide that flow. Because if you don't, you can end up with a whole heap more car parks, but no one actually wants to go into the car park because it might stress their marriage or something else like that. So,
Councillor Burman.
Good morning, Mr. Fisher. Just two questions. The Innisfail Aerodrome, was there some work that was to be done in relation to the upcoming Innisfail Autofest?
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, there is, and we have just got quotes on that work now. So there was originally some funding in the budget to do what's called a run-up area for the users there. So effectively, rather than having a bitumen sealed area where they can rev their engines prior to takeoff, just to test that everything's working as normal. Obviously, with a bitumen seal, there can be loose stones and that can flick up and cause some unwanted damage to their propellers. So the intent of that project was to install an asphalt pad with less chance of debris. Following on from that, with the conversation around Autofest, there was a requirement to increase the size of that area to accommodate what would be a burnout pad for that event. That has increased, obviously, the budget for that project, and it'd be while we've got quotes on that now, it's one of the key things we'll be talking with councillors about in RB3 to consider whether council's supportive of that increase based on the fact of that it won't actually bring benefits to the users. It's more about facilitating the Autofest event. So, yeah.
David. Mr. Goodman.
I just wanted to say, Mr. Fisher slightly misspoke there, and I'm sure councillors will be well aware that increase in scope doesn't increase the budget. It has increased the price of the work, so the budget hasn't changed.
Thanks for the correction.
And we need to manage that process.
So, thank you for that clarification, Mr. Goodman. Councillor Perman.
And one more, Mr. Fisher. Can you give us an update on the transfer station at Mission Beach at all? How's it going? Have we still got issues down there with the overspend?
Through the chair, I'll have to take that one on notice. I haven't heard anything that would that suggests to me that there's anything to add in terms of additional scope from my last update, but I'll take that one on notice and get back to you.
Thank you.
Councillor Millwood.
Through the chair, I just noticed on their Murray Street upgrade, I see it's in design phase 90%. Is there any line of sight as to when we might see this project on the table?
Sure. Through the chair, that project, we've given our final comments back to the designers, so expected full final design within the next week. I guess one of the key considerations now is whether we look to deliver that work in-house or contract it out. We will work through with our delivery services team in the next coming weeks to work out whether we, once that design's complete, whether we advertise a tender or whether we choose to deliver that in-house. Either way, expect the work to start in June and commence then. So whether it's an in-house or external delivery, we're on track for that.
Just a comment around crew by function. The feedback I'm getting from the workforce is that our people are very happy with the process. For council to get increased productivity, we need flexibility, and crew by function will deliver that. Shortly, we're going to need a crew flexible enough to go to Port Hinchinbrook and look after normalisation of those assets, including the sewage treatment plant. On the other end of the scale, we've got labourers who have been asking for opportunities to become multi-skilled in the water section, and we've got 5 labourers that are now doing restricted plumbing licences. So good outcomes right across the board, and the feedback from the blue collar sector is one of happiness that they've been listened to, getting their opportunities. In the crew by function area, some of our key people have now been elevated as team leaders in those crews. So yeah, everything I'm hearing about those structural changes has been really positive. Are there any further comments or questions?
Yeah, there's one more.
Yep.
Sorry.
Councillor Millwood.
This Dunk Island jetty, is that the replenishment that's in here in the system or no?
No, so that's not the sand replenishment. That is, I guess, an allocation to repair corrosion on that structure.
No further questions or comments? Somebody move the recommendation, please. Moved by Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Pervin. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. We move on to item 7, Planning Services, 7.1, page 107, Activate Cassowary Coast Development Incentive Scheme, and Mr. Jones will present this report. Welcome again.
Good morning, everyone. Council, this policy has been in effect in various iterations since 2014. The purpose of this report is to adopt an amended policy until the 31st of March 2023, correct minor administrative errors, remove ambiguity in regards to eligibility of land within the residential and rural residential zone, where the land is not serviced by the trunk sewage supply infrastructure network, and clearly state council's intentions regarding the eligibility of land within the rural zone and township zone Cardboard local plan, Cardboard Port Hinchinbrook precinct, given the issues surrounding the ownership of the critical infrastructure. The aim of this policy is to encourage development that achieves certain strategic objectives for the Cassowary Coast by allowing a reduction in infrastructure charges payable of up to 100% in relation to certain eligible developments in eligible locations. It is recommended that the amended policy be adopted and have effect until the 31st of March 2023. It is noted that it is the absolute discretion of council whether a discount on infrastructure charges is granted for a particular development and to what percentage, and that the Chief Executive Officer undertake a review of the policy and investigate the workshop and provide a report to council prior to the 31st of March 2023 with consideration of current market trends, the local government infrastructure plan and infrastructure charges. Happy to answer any questions, council.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Just want to make a comment about the policy. Initially, the Planning Department brought a proposal to Mayor Shannon, and we were finding at the time that a lot of DAs were being approved, but they were lapsing. There was a hell of a lot of land banking occurring, and councillors of the day thought it was a good idea to give this a go. When Councillor Kremastis was elected mayor, the planners come to the mayor and said, look, the policy's working well. We think it can be more effective if you increase it to 100%. For the small minority that don't accept this policy, they need to realise we had a bad record of land banking. We were approving and they were lapsing. We were getting no job creation, and now this policy's made it happen. So I'm very supportive of it going forward. But anyway, look, I'd like to ask if any, Councillor Barnes, sorry,
Good,
didn't
thank
see
you,
your hand
Mr.
up.
Mayor. I also am totally in favour of this, as I think it will stimulate building in our area. And just remember, it is only for 12 months if anyone has any issues with it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Pervin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, look, it's as you just said, Councillor Barnes, it's only for an extra 12 months. But I mean, it's been taken up relatively good in our last 18 months of council now. For me, I think it's a great move, and we are only doing areas that have infrastructure in place. It's not like we're going to go to a rural area and say, go for your life, build 14 units here, you're not paying a cent. It's only within those areas that council deem. And at the end of the day, it's not 100% that we will give every developer. It's on a basis where there could be some developments are only 50%, and the recommendation will come from officers to council to consider that as well. So it's not always going to be 100%.
Thanks for that clarification, Councillor Pervin. Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence. I think we're also missing some of the external financial benefit that's flowing out of this. I had a conversation last week with a couple of our local retailers that work with white goods and housing goods, and the increase in the builds that this sort of incentive is encouraging is really benefiting their businesses quite significantly. They've seen a lot of work going on. We've got new people moving in. They don't want to drag everything up with them out of Sydney or Melbourne, and they're fitting out brand new houses locally in our local businesses. So the extra benefit that flows out of the policy like this into other sectors, I think, needs to be acknowledged as well. So it's great work, and I fully support this policy.
Thank you for those positive comments, Councillor Baines. Councillor Millwood.
Yes, I'd just like to reiterate one important thing within that policy, and it's eligible projects in eligible locations. So yeah, that's really important.
Yep, and thank you for that point, and that's why the word the jurisdiction of the council to make a decision about that. We're not locked into a tight framework. We have the flexibility to make that interpretation. Look, I know this policy is working because people from other regions have contacted me personally and asked for a rundown of how it works, and I put them in touch with our staff. So I know there's other regions watching this policy closely as well. Are there any further comments or questions? Somebody move the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Purban, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.2, page 116, application for reduction in infrastructure charges. Mr Jones will present.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Council is in receipt of a request from Neville and Lenora Campbell, care of RPS Australia East, for a 100% reduction of infrastructure charges relating to the development of the reconfiguration of a lot situated at Joffrey Crescent, Wongling Beach. The application was approved by Council by delegated authority, subject to conditions on the 11th of February 2022. Proposed development complies with eligibility criteria and assessment criteria, and therefore is recommended that a request for 100% reduction in infrastructure charges be approved by Council, provided that all works associated with the development as contained within the reconfiguration of a lot approval and any other statutory requirements are completed prior to 11th February 2025. Happy to answer any questions, Council.
Any questions for Mr Jones? Moved by Councillor Toohey, seconded by Councillor Baines. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to item 7.3, page 123, application for reduction in infrastructure charges.
Mr Mayor, I'll be leaving the room, as I said earlier.
Oh, this is the one. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Barnes. No, B1. I should have said B1.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Council is in receipt of a request from Mr Mario Quagliata, care of Planning Plus, for a 100% reduction in infrastructure charges. The development is for the reconfiguration of a lot to create two rural lots. The intent is that the larger lot, being proposed Lot 1, will continue to be farmed for sugarcane, and this smaller lot, being proposed Lot 2, will allow for the construction of a new dwelling house and associated outbuildings. There was sufficient justification for Council to approve the reconfiguration, given that the site was split by a defined watercourse, and a good quality agricultural land assessment report for proposed Lot 2 concluded that it was unsuitable for agricultural production with its own right. Proposed development does not comply with the eligibility criteria, number 3, of the reduction in infrastructure charges policy, given that the two rural lots continue to be zoned rural under the planning scheme, and given the rural zoning of the lot, the development does not provide for capital investment in accordance with the planning scheme. Therefore, it is recommended that Council refuse a reduction in infrastructure charges request, given that the proposed development does not comply with the eligibility criteria or intent of the policy. Happy to answer any questions, Council.
Thank you, Mr Jones. Any questions? Moved by Councillor McLeod, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Somebody, oh, thanks, Dan. Can I just say, in closing off that last matter, a true measurement of how good this policy is, those two added to the 8 that we approved last meeting. So in the last 2 months, 1 was it? 1 today. Oh yeah, we knocked 1 back, sorry. Yep. Okay, we move on to item 7.4, page 128, the Mission Beach tourism area, monetary contributions in lieu of provision of car parking. Mr Jones will present.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider implementing a new policy, being the Mission Beach tourism area, monetary contributions in lieu of the provision of car parking policy. The Mission Beach Master Plan recognised the need for reconfigured car parking and separation between vehicles and pedestrians in the Mission Beach tourism area. Council purchased land at the corner of Endeavour Avenue and Campbell Street and has constructed 56 car parks on the site. Whilst development in Mission Beach would ordinarily be required to provide a combination of on-site and on-street car parking, the purpose of this policy may allow Council, at its discretion, to obtain a monetary contribution from the developer towards the cost of the provision of car parking in lieu of physical provision of car parks either on-site or on-street by the developer. It is noted that the payment of a monetary contribution under the infrastructure agreement in lieu of the provision of on-site car parking does not provide an applicant with ownership rights. The car park shall remain under council control and must be available for use by the general public at all times. If council decides to accept a monetary contribution in lieu of providing car parking spaces, the applicant shall pay a monetary contribution in accordance with the following formula. The shortfall in the number of car park spaces required under the planning scheme multiplied by $21,927. The calculation of this figure is explained in the body of the report, but includes both the cost of the land and construction costs of the car park. The policy would apply to land located within the Township Zone, Greater Mission Beach Tourism Precinct. Council has recommended that Council adopt the policy with a currency period of up to and including the 30th of June 2022. And in lieu of the provision of providing on-site car parking, the applicant shall pay a monetary contribution of $21,927 per car park and request the Chief Executive Officer investigate, workshop and provide a report to Council prior to the 30th of June 2022 regarding the monetary contribution in lieu of the provision of car parking, which incorporates all relevant townships within the region, including the review of this policy. Happy to answer any questions, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Councillor Pervin, you got the
Yes.
planning chair. You like to speak?
Yeah,
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move a motion that council adopt the Mission Beach adopt the Mission Beach Tourism monetary contributions in lieu of the provision of car parking policy, subject to the monetary contribution in lieu of the provision of car parking, reflecting the construction costs only of a figure of $12,429, excluding GST per car park. And number two, request the Chief Executive Officer investigate, workshop and provide a report to Council to consider a Cassowary Coast monetary contribution in lieu of the provision of car parking policy, which considers Mission Beach, Cardwell, Innisfail and Tully. The reasons for not adopting the recommendation of officers said is that in most cases, Council can provide additional car parks in existing road areas and reserves, and in those circumstances, it's not reasonable to include the purchase price of land in the calculation of a monetary contribution. I'll put that forward to my fellow councillors.
Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Barnes, you second?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I also would like to talk on it. Thanks for inviting me to do so. I just don't think, like in the future, we are, as a council, will be building further car parks, and we don't know where our land's going to come from. We probably will be using council land, and we don't know that we are going to be buying land in the future. So I think it's just an absorbent cost, and I'd like to support the mover.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Millwood.
Yes, through the chair. So if we don't build a car park on council land and we are required to buy the land to build the car park, is the monetary contribution in line with other areas?
Mr. Jones, would you?
Yeah, Mr. Graffin. Yeah, through the chair. Thanks for your question, Councillor Millwood. It really does come down to a case-by-case basis. So obviously the price of land will be different between Cardwell, Mission Beach, Tully and Innisfail, and therefore I'm expecting that once we do this review, if it's passed by council today, that those figures will differ between the four.
You happy with that response, Councillor Millwood? Yep. Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. Any further comments? Put it to the vote. All in favour? That's Councillor Barnes, Chewy, McLeod, Baines, Pervin and Nolan, and Councillor Millwood against? Yep. Okay, that now becomes the substantive motion. All in favour? Again, Councillor Barnes, Chewy, McLeod, Baines, Pervin and Nolan. That's carried. Thank you. We move on to general business. Any general business, councillors? Councillor Chewy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have some questions, but I'm not sure who's going to respond. Mr. Goodman, Mr. Fisher, Mr. McBride, Mr. Slattery. Anybody? Well, it's all their sort of stuff. Mr. Goodman's the head honcho, so I figure he would know it all. I'm hoping so, Mr. Goodman. No pressure.
No. Certainly don't know everything.
I just have three questions. The nature play at Wheatley Park, I know it's on the... No. Oh, Mr. Oh, there you go. Wrong director. I stand corrected. Apologies, but don't go away.
Don't apologise, Councillor. We've got all day.
Okay.
We've got all day.
Apologies, Mr. Sadler, for not calling you up. Yes, so if we could just have an update on where we are with the nature play. I know community are very keen to see this move forward, so if you could fill us in, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, through the chair, councillor. As you know, Wheatley's Park was utilised for the Irreverent film, which obviously gave a huge economic boost to our region during COVID. And the want from that is to obviously give Wheatley Park a bit of a refresh. And from past discussions and alignment with our open space improvement plan, nature play has been identified as where we'd like to go and look. There is some draft designs that have been done recently, and the team has been talking with C4 and Peter Rules and a few others down there. We have looked at that project, and we will do some broader consultation moving forward. So that will be in the near future, and I've asked the asset maintenance team to work with the community relations and services team to do so.
Thank you. Do we have a time frame at all in regarding to when we might actually see, when I can go and play in the park?
I'll have to take that on notice, councillor. I
Thank you.
don't have that timeline at this stage.
Thank you.
Sorry, through the chair, the comms will be out this week is the intent to actually go out and seek some feedback from the community on the current design. But the outcome, I guess, of that community consultation will drive delivery for the project. We don't want to put something in that's not supported by the community there.
Okay. Thank you. I do have a couple more. Is this for you? Do you have something for Mr. No, use Mr. Sadler while he's there. Not at all.
Thank you, Mr. Sadler, if you don't mind. We've spoken previously about the state of the Kirrima Range and the future works. Would you have a report there?
In relation to Coomera Range, through the chair, Deputy Mayor, I talked with the works planner earlier in the week in relation to one of the things you had queried previously was around vegetation and tree management on that road. They were programmed, and with the rain that we did have a couple of weeks ago, there's been a whole heap of reactive works requests that have been done. So they're working on that. They at this stage have planned for the next fortnight, obviously weather dependent, to go up there and do those works. But we want to do that prep work in relation to, we do have future road works coming up there. So I'm going to do that before the machinery gets rolled out.
Good, thank you very much, Mr. Sadler. And while we've got you, this may be a state matter, may not be a council matter, but I do have a caravan park owner had a hell of an issue the week before last, where he had a COVID positive person staying in his van park who would not isolate, kept going to the toilets, shop. So he evicted this person and has been put through turmoil by this person, not only one-on-one but also on social media. I'm probably asking you too hard a question as a council officer, but just your thoughts.
Yeah, through the chair, Deputy Mayor, it is a state ruling. I suppose the Chief Health Officer has directives in relation to that, and when you do have a positive test, there's a process in relation to registering with Queensland Health, those things. They do have fact sheets and in relation to how you isolate. And I suppose not knowing all the detail of this one, particularly there's a COVID hotline that you can ring, which is, I've just got the number here, 13 42 68. And they would give advice in relation to what the operator might need, but also the guest in relation to, and also highlighting the range of different alternatives that person or the guest could accommodate, and that might not be at that location. So without knowing all the bits and pieces, that's where I would go and direct, particularly the operator. And I suppose with shared facilities and things that you've just highlighted, that is definitely a risk for transmission. So I think that was probably a good choice on that behalf.
Thank you. I won't use a name, I will just throw it out there. The update, please, on the Bingle Bay Path. I've had community members talk to me about the design plan being on the website, and so people can look at it. Do you have any information on that, Mr. Goodman?
I'm fairly certain that it is not on the website, but it is something that we just had some discussion about that this morning. That's something that can be added.
Yeah, my understanding it was going to be, so that people that couldn't attend the walkthrough could look at it and make their the people that live in the community could have some input into the proposal.
Absolutely, yeah, we'll make sure that happens.
Thank you. Sorry, and just the update on the missing toilets at Ulysses Park. Are we any closer for market stall holders to have a toilet facility at Wheatley's on Market Day? Thank you.
Yes, simple answer to that is through the chair is yes. So the 1-8 have, we believe, largely completed installation of that toilet that they will make available to stall holders at the markets, and we're expecting commissioning of that within a week.
So confirming it's for the stall holders. So who actually owns the toilet? The caravan park people? Management? Yes.
Correct.
If there are issues, I'm not saying there will be, but if there are issues, do council have a right to query any reluctance on the behalf of the park to actually share the facility?
Yeah, we have an agreement with them that they will make that available to stall holders. So if that's not the case, then we were happy to be part of those discussions to ensure that agreement is honoured. Further to that, there, I guess, in terms of the general public, we are advancing. It's sort of been an off again, on again access to the Progress Hall, and we have an in-principle agreement with the Mission Beach and Bingle Bay Progress Association. We have a draft of a user agreement that we would like to enter into with that entity, and that would allow public access on market days to those toilets.
That would be fantastic. I know we've had several hiccups along the way with that, so I would love to see that happen. So I thank you for the work that's been done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. Councillor Millwood, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, through the chair, I'd just like to reiterate what Trudy said, that it was actually the toilet that will be supplied with 1-8 is actually a stall holder toilet, not a general public toilet. And the other thing was, I just wanted to thank all the people who participated in the recent Clean Up Australia Day. I know that down at Caramine Beach we collected 330 kilos of rubbish. So well done to everyone that participated in any area. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Any further, Councillor Pervin?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say a big congratulations to the organisation of the Feast of the Senses on the weekend. It was a well-run event. The committee's been working hard over the last 12 months to get it up and going. Council resources as well that were used in relation to getting it up and going. Council staff helping on the day. I know myself, the Mayor, Mr. Sadler, the Councillor Baines were there at 4 o'clock in the morning to get marquees set up. But it was a great event. My feedback I've got from everybody, it was hot, the food was great, and it was just a great day overall, and the crowd was unbelievable. We got some very good exposure on the Cairns Post and on the news, I believe, as well. It was just a great event, and yeah, hands off to the committee for the Feast of the Senses. Looking forward to next year's.
Yeah, look, I just want to make a comment about that as well. Most of the events were booked out, and we had criticism that they want more next year. The gala dinner was brilliant at the Crown. First time I've been in there for a meal. That was outstanding. And this year, we didn't have the support of the work camp guys, which is huge. And you know that, Councillor Perman, because you've done the hard stuff in terms of supplying your own vehicle, collecting the marquees and returning them. I want to acknowledge Mr. Sadler. who didn't honour his commitment and get up at 4. He celebrated heavily about that trophy on Saturday night, and Councillor Pervin had to ring him and kick him in the ribs about 4:30. But to his credit, he did front up, and he put in a big effort setting up and pulling stuff down in the afternoon. The crowd was brilliant. At the gala dinner, we had people from Townsville and Brisbane sitting beside us, and they were the ones that made the complaint about, we tried to book river cruises, booked out. Tried to do the food trail, booked out. And they visited our region for the whole weekend, and there was nothing on the Saturday. So clearly, at the SWAT meeting, the committee of 7 have got to do a review and fill that gap on the Saturday. We're going to keep people here, attract them and keep them for the whole weekend. We've got to give them something to do on the Saturday. But outstanding work by 7 volunteers. Previously, it's been organised by a coordinator who got $30,000 a year. So nobody got paid, and yet 7 volunteers stepped up and delivered a great outcome like that. It was very well run and very well delivered on the day. Spoke to people who are stallholders, and they said couldn't fault the way it was managed and delivered. There weren't any hiccups whatsoever. The most important thing, Kids Corner, absolutely brilliant. They smashed records in terms of takings, and in Cane Cutter Court, the kids' arcade was open, and I went past there a few times. It was packed out. So a couple of real big additions this year, and that was the thrust of moving from the centre of town to the riverfront. Activities for our children, and parents support us in spades, because the people that volunteered at Kids Corner could not believe the amount of money they'd taken there. So, Councillor Pervin, you were the leader from a council point of view. Thank you very much for what you did and how you delivered. Much appreciated. Councillor Chewy.
Yes, I'd just like to support Councillor Pervin and your own words, Mr Mayor. I think it was a great event. I'd like to congratulate the students at Good Counsel College who also gave up their Sunday to help. It's great to see the young people getting out and volunteering and being part of the community events. Councillor Pervin, do we need more members on that committee? Mr Mayor talked about 7. We know that volunteers are hard, to come by. So do we ask now if people love the event so much, are they willing to actually be part of the organising of it?
Yeah, members are always wanted for the Feast of the Senses group, and I'm sure when the meetings kick off not too far away to have a end of event at mid, and then early next year, won't be far away. They'll be beginning to prepare for next year's event. So yeah, members are more than welcome to join, and just go to the Feast of the Senses website for that information.
Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and far be it from me not to say something in general business. On the Feast of the Senses, I hear the cooking demonstrations were extraordinarily impressive, especially the first one this year. I heard it was really, really quite good. What I wanted to raise today, Mr Mayor, was to bring to everyone's attention, because we won't have another meeting beforehand. Anzac Day is on Monday, the 25th of April. The council have been doing some great work with all the RSLs in the area, and a lot of the pre-planning has already been done. So I would just encourage everyone to please keep in their minds Anzac Day, Monday the 25th. The dawn services kick off at 4:20, which was the exact time apparently the first boot hit the ground. Make sure you're there well before then. And our community is always very supportive of Anzac Day ceremonies. And I'd just like to pass my congratulations on to our officers who have assisted the clubs in their work. So Anzac Day, don't forget, see you there.
Thanks, Councillor Baines. Any further general business? Councillor Barnes.
Oh, good. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, we've got Mr Goodman up there. We don't want to make his day too easy. Mr Goodman, the teething problems at the Tully Grandstand. There's a few issues there. It's a beautiful structure, but like any building, there's teething problems. Would you have something to report?
Through the chair, Councillor Barnes, there are some teething problems ongoing there. Some of those are taking a little longer to deal with because some of those items are still under warranty, and so we're making sure that those are repaired under warranty rather than just going replacing or fixing them ourselves. So that can take a little longer to make sure that that's done and not costing council in managing those. So there has been issues with the lift, recent issues with the lift. That's been repaired and is fully operational. There was some issues with the security doors, access to the kitchen. That is repaired and operational. There's opportunity for some future improvements in those doors to make sure that doesn't that failure in locking doesn't happen again, and we're working through considering those. There's inspection by the a warranty inspection on some of the fridges, one of the fridges in the kitchen today. Dishwasher again is a warranty repair, and we don't have a date as yet from the warranty from the supplier in Cairns for that. And one of the roller doors we are waiting on a motor to be replaced there, and I guess it's no surprise to anybody that supply of different parts and materials are a bit of a struggle these days right across the board. So teams working to get those issues repaired. Also taking into account that where they are warranty items, that we are getting those done by the supplier or manufacturer rather than ratepayers paying for that. We have also now got weekly cleaning in much of that facility on a weekly basis. That's been done externally and not by the users, and so we're building that into the management of that facility, and there's a meeting with significant users of that facility organised in the first week of May as we look to progress a user agreement, a formal user agreement in that facility.
Thank you very much for a very intense report. I was waiting for Mr. Fisher to give a report on the mountain bike meeting that he attended earlier on Tuesday afternoon, and I'd like to thank the fellow councillors and all that council staff that attended the 5:30 meeting at the Cardwell Country Club last Tuesday. That was very well attended by the public, and also we had 3 speakers from World Trails and a very intense works program and design structure. It was very well done on the building of the pump track, which will be, they had videos, and so people who knew nothing about it left very, very well informed. Have you got any more to add to that?
Through the chair, I can add Mr. Fisher and our project manager there both given me an update on that meeting, and both were very positive about the large turnout and the positive reception from the community of Cardwell. It's also pointed out that there was commitments for donations of helmets and a bike from Western Australia, and the project manager that we have appointed for that project is going to take it upon herself to challenge some North Queensland bike shops to lift their game into providing. This is not on the books. Has just taken it upon herself. We're not paying her as project manager to do that, but she's going to challenge some North Queensland, particularly some Cairns bike shops to get on board with that, and getting the community of Cardwell encouraging them to use this new facility.
Good, thank you very much. And probably a question to yourself or the CEO, whoever chooses to answer it. I see you both biting at the bit. The sewage and dredging update.
Look, through the chair, as you can understand, the Commonwealth are often very interested in announcing funding agreements, and funding. So we're sitting waiting for that process as far as the Commonwealth funding for the STP itself. So that funding has been committed and executed on our behalf. We're waiting for a formal announcement to be made in that space. The state funding agreement is at the last phase of negotiations, and council officers are considering that agreement currently. That's in its 5th, 6th or 7th iteration, and also the dredging funding agreement. So that the commitment again has been received from the Commonwealth. I think a 4th iteration of that agreement has gone back to the federal government yesterday, I believe. So everything is moving. Concurrent to those processes, council is out currently for tender for the detailed design of the STP. Council has been meeting with the liquidator around access to dredge spoil ponds on lot 170 and progressing those conversations, and have a project manager on this project who is driving some outcomes. I think we're also currently out for survey for the site, so those processes working concurrently, and everything is moving at this stage in line with the project's plan.
Thank you. Further to that, the electorate of Hinchinbrook, Nick DeMetto's staff contacted Andrew this week seeking a summary of what he just spoke to, and it'll appear in Nick's bulletin on the 4th of April. So the wider community is going to be fully informed through the Hinchinbrook electorate office. Are there any further general business items? I just got two. This is a Councillor Chewy initiative initially. She asked councillors to wear blue and yellow in support of the people of Ukraine who are being slaughtered currently. And today, Pastor Mark Dewar delivered a very lovely opening prayer where he touched on the plight of the people in Ukraine. So to take it a little bit further, I've got a proposal for councillors' consideration that we follow the great lead of southern councils where they're flying the Ukrainian flag at their council chamber. I think it'd be a good look. Those people have lost their freedom. As I said, many lives have been lost at the moment, and it wouldn't cost us a lot to show our support via flying the Ukrainian flag at the Tully and Innisfail chamber. If there's an appetite, I won't move a motion. I'll leave it simply with the CEO, find some petty cash. There's got to be a hollow log there somewhere, and see if we can do that for the people of Ukraine. Can I leave that with you, Mr. CEO? I now want to talk about this wonderful trophy at the front. It's been contested 21 times. The Leprechauns have now won 13, the Roosters 8. They've won it the last 3 years. When I sought permission to bring it down here today, because I know there's Atherton councillors watching, there's a double message here. When I got the Leprechauns yesterday to pick this up, they actually just bought Loctite from Bunnings, so that's going to be staying in Cassowary Coast for a long time. But they did lend it to us for today. It was a great game. They flogged us at under 18. Terrific game in reserve grade. A last-minute try in the last minutes of the game, and then a conversion from the sideline in the last seconds of the game, and that game ended up 20-all. But the A-grade game was really tight, gritty, 8-4 at half-time. The Leps got on top in the second half, and Rod Marty very politely handed over the trophy, and it now belongs in our hands for another year. The only year that it didn't get contested, which is a bit of history, they've held it 2018, 19 and 2021. 2020, the game didn't go ahead because of COVID, so a bit of history has been recorded on that as well about the pandemic. So I just wanted to acknowledge to fellow councillors the trophy has returned, and the Leprechauns are getting Loctite to keep it here for a long time. Given there's no further general business, we will now close the meeting to the public, and the reasons for closing the meeting to the public we're going into confidential. Item 9.1, page 139, sundry debtor review of water charge. 9.2, page 142, family daycare scheme. And 9.3, Hyatt Street Reservoir Supply Main Stage 1. Would somebody move we close the meeting to the public? Moved by Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Pervin. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors and staff, just like to ask somebody to move that we reopen the meeting to the public. Councillor Pervin moved. Councillor Baines second. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to confidential item 9.1, page 139, sundry debtor review, and Ms Fick will present this report.
This report provides council with advice in relation to an historic debt relating to water augmentation charges, with a recommendation that council authorise the Chief Executive Officer to write off the debt, excluding legal costs.
Any questions for the officer, councillors? If not, would somebody move the recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor McLeod, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms Vick. We move on to item 9.2, page 142, family daycare scheme, and Ms Saffron will present this report.
Welcome. Thank you. The recommendation is that council adopts a new fee structure to commence on the 4th of April 2022. The proposed fee structure will be educators working under 30 hours per week will be charged 1.95 administration. Educators working 30 to 50 hours per week will be charged 1.8 administration fee, and educators working over 50 hours per week will be charged 1.65. The request that the CEO investigate federal government sustainability funding program eligibility.
Thank you, Ms Saffron. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Chewy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just quickly in relation to daycare in general, firstly though, the fees that we're discussing here won't be impacted by families in any way?
No, families, it doesn't affect the families at all.
Okay, excellent. And just in daycare in general, we're still looking for carers throughout the entire Cassowary
We are
Coast?
looking for carers. At this time we've got 10 carers, and basically we've had up to 32 carers. It doesn't matter how many carers we've got, we don't seem to be able to manage the need for childcare.
Excellent. And what can carers select the amount of hours? Is there a minimum amount that they can be provided?
Ideally, no less than 3 days a week, and that's basically based on the fact that there's a lot of administration and work involved for the educator as well as for the service. But as far as the educator is concerned, it's probably not worth the effort if it's less than that.
Okay. And what criteria do you need?
They need to have a certificate in childcare, either have one or be working towards a blue card, and a senior first aid certificate.
Okay, so if anybody's listening, there's work out there if you want it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. Any further questions?
Just one quick question, Mr Mayor. Mr Saffron, has there ever been a private company approached you on purchasing a business as such? This business?
No, not because these are contracts. So you've got to be registered with the federal government. You've got to go through an accreditation process to undertake, to be able to provide the service. And the educators are contractors, so I'm not sure how that would work in the sense of purchasing the business. But no one's ever approached us.
I think, as Mr Mayor mentioned, the family daycare system is vital to our community. My children loved it when they were there, and I know I've been approached by people for after-school care, school holiday care. It's a really, really important part for working parents, So I congratulate our team and do hope that we get more people willing to come forward to take on the role of a family daycare.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. You're dead right. In terms of our social fabric, having a service like family daycare is critical, particularly at the moment. If you look at the federal election, they're all talking about cost of living. Well, if you're going to address cost of living in your household budget, mum's got to be able to go to work. One wage doesn't cut it. And if we don't have family daycare, mum can't go to work. Simple as that. And we've got a responsibility to play our part in that, I believe. Would somebody move the recommendation, please? Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Chewy. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Ms Saffron. We now move on to 9.3, page 153, the Hyatt Street Reservoir Supply, main stage 1. Mr Page will present.
The purpose of this report is for Council to consider submitted tenders and award contract CCW 000176 for the Hyatt Street Reservoir Supply Main Stage 1. The works associated with this contract entail the supply, delivery, installation and commissioning of a 300 diameter and 150 diameter water mains, valves, hydrants and fittings between the Hyde Street Reservoir, Access Road and Mar Street, Tully via McQuillan Street. It is proposed to award this lump sum contract to Celtic Construction and Utility Services, who submitted the highest scoring tender submission following the assessment process. The recommendation that 1. The lump sum tender for contract CCW 000176 Hyde Street Reservoir Supply Main, Stage 1, as submitted by CCUS Pty Ltd, being the most advantageous to Council, be accepted for the amount of $574,242.72 exclusive of GST. And 2. In accordance with the Local Government Act 2009, Council delegate authority to the Chief Executive Officer to enter into a contract, negotiate, finalise and execute any and all matters associated with or in relation to the contract, subject to Council's normal procurement policies and practices.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Any questions or comments? Councillor Millwood? Moved by Councillor Millwood, seconded by Councillor Pervin. Before we put it to the vote, I just want to say water is critical in terms of our services to the community. I shared a couple of drinks with the Tableland Mayor on Saturday night, and he was envious of the fact that we don't have boil water alerts anymore. It's because of the recommendations our staff have made. It cost millions of dollars, and a lot of it's been funded by state and federal. We've been fortunate, but we also have a lot of breaks under the ground. Councillor Pervin, Belvedere, Councillor Millwood in Tully. I think that's the highest rate is in Tully. So we've got to support these recommendations, because if we can't deliver good drinkable water, it's third world stuff. Simple as that. It's a good investment. Councillor
Mr. Page, while we've got you, I know you would have covered these bases, but just to make sure, we're right with access roads, we're right with permits and the land it sits on?
Yes, we've entered into, we've purchased all the land, we've gone through all those agreements and so forth previous to getting to this point in time. So, yes, we've covered all those bases.
Okay, any further questions, comments? We have a mover and a second. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I declare the meeting closed at 11:22. Thanks, everybody. Thanks.